Good morning! Welcome to our weekly Facebook Live. I'm Emma Back, the founder of She Sings Out Loud, and I go live doing an in-depth training and Q&A in our free Facebook group community every Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. And you can sign up for that. You can get into that group, She Sings Out Loud Sisterhood. It is linked here on the Facebook page, or you can shoot me a message if you want to get into it. And so I just did this in-depth training on female shame, the inner patriarch, and reclaiming power. And I always like to do the in-depth training in our Facebook group and then jump here on to the Facebook page and just do a kind of quick sort of update, give you some of the highlights. And then if you want to get the full training, you can jump into our free Facebook group. We'd love to have you. It's a beautiful community of women and femme people supporting each other in our music. A couple of announcements before I dive in. The Revolutionize Your Music Practice free 5-day training is coming up. I run this 3 times a year. It's coming up in just a couple of weeks, and you can get into it at any time. But then if you want to do it live with me, where I jump on into a Facebook group and I support you every step of the way and you can get your questions answered, you can head over to shesingsoutloud.com to our free resources page and jump into that training. This is all about supporting you to really have more joy, more freedom, more self-expression, more clarity, and more focus in your music practice, and to really be sure that what you're practicing is really leading you to fulfill on your dreams and your goals in music. We also have our 90-day program from closet singer-songwriter to powerful performer coming up at the end of July, and I'm now jumping on the phone with people to have a 30-minute free consultation to see if this is something that would support you in your dreams and your goals. So feel free to jump on the phone with me, go to shesingsoutloud.com, and you can just click on the home page. There's a button to schedule a free call with me. Now, for our topic for today. So we have obviously the outer patriarchy, right? That is one we maybe could spend a lot of time on, and it's important to talk about, but I think we all know it. We all have these moments where we have had to fight to be heard, where we have felt like we have to prove ourselves, or we felt like the music space is incredibly male dominated. So we all have those experiences. And then we also have these internal blocks, these ways that we've actually inherited patriarchal views, and we're sort of perpetuating patriarchy inside of our own selves. Okay, so just take a moment to take that in, because it's a little bit radical to say. There's outer patriarchy, but then there is the internalized work around patriarchy that we really need to do. And Cedra Stone, who is an incredible psychotherapist and thought leader and spiritual leader, she talks about this. She calls it the inner patriarch, and she has an amazing book that's called The Shadow King. Definitely recommend it. And this has to do with how we kind of have these beliefs of how women are supposed to be and how they're not supposed to be. Okay? And I think that this is also where a lot of kind of transphobia comes from, right? There's outer patriarchy and there's also inner patriarchy, that people sort of just develop these beliefs and these fears because of these kind of very gendered traditional do's and don'ts of patriarchy that we've also as human beings internalized. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of put that out there, and I also want to just say a little disclaimer that some of the language that I'm using is gendered, and I recognize that, and it's really intended to just kind of open something up about how the feminine has been suppressed in all people, in all genders. Okay, and this is really about reclaiming the feminine, reclaiming feminine values, and also breaking open all of the shoulds and should nots inside of that to really have more power and more freedom and more self-expression. So I'm not talking about female-bodied people when I mention anything, like when I say the word woman, when I say the word feminine. I am talking about people who identify strongly as with womanhood, woman with an X instead of an A, right? Womanhood, and really, the feminine, and really value what is the feminine. So we have feminine and we have masculine aspects to ourselves, and this exists in all people. And again, we're sort of dividing this as a way to open something up, and we're talking about, in some ways, more on a spiritual level. There's the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, and they are in union. So there are these two energies that live inside of us in all genders, and they are in union, and they kind of make up this whole. Okay, so if this doesn't resonate with you, I understand, because I definitely don't want this to be about just, gender stereotypes or anything like that, but it's just about recognizing these two aspects in ourselves, again, in all genders and all people, that come into union and support us in being whole. Now, as women, or as femme people, or as people who identify strongly with the feminine, we're often kind of struggling because the feminine has been so suppressed in our society. Okay, we are struggling to kind of feel like this is valued, that we are allowed to sort of embrace this aspect of ourselves, to learn to lead from that aspect, and I really think that this is where a lot of healing can happen in the world, is if we sort of honor the feminine, are able to kind of integrate her into our society. Hi, Elizabeth, welcome. So I talk a lot about this in the From Closet Singer-Songwriter to Powerful Performer program, and I'll probably talk a lot more about it on other Facebook Lives, but just wanted to put that out there as a backdrop when we're talking about the inner patriarch. So the inner patriarch is a thing that sort of shuts down the feminine, right, and says it's not valued, it's not worthy, or it has to do with really traditional roles of how women can be and how they can't be. So for myself in my life, this has kind of shown up by thinking that I'm supposed to want to have children because I'm a woman. And I love children, I teach children, I work with children, but I don't actually want to have children of my own. But it's been this thing in my own mind, not just from other people, in my own mind, that's kind of said, wait a minute, but you're a woman in your 30s, right? You're supposed to want children. Don't you want children? Are you sure you don't want children? This kind of voice that happens. And that is my inner patriarch sort of questioning my choice as a woman to not have children, and kind of that there's this thought pattern that thinks that I'm supposed to, because that has been a traditional way that women have had to show up. So you can look for yourself in your life where you have experienced this. Maybe you have some story you're carrying. And really what I want to talk about is that this shows up in our creative process. So this shows up at ways that we stop ourselves, we inhibit our creative instincts, or we think that we're supposed to show up on stage in a certain way, dress a certain way, don't dress a certain way, attract attention, don't attract attention, it's dangerous to attract attention, don't be too sexy, do be too sexy. All the kind of stories and how that can impact us as creators, as musicians, as people wanting to put ourselves out there in the world. We have this little story that's been holding us back. So I go into a lot more detail inside our private Facebook group, our free private Facebook group, She Sings Out Loud Sisterhood. So I'll just leave you with that thought today, this invitation to examine your inner patriarch. What is that voice of patriarchy that lives in your own head that is telling you how you can and you can't be, and specifically in relationship to your music and your self-expression, but also anywhere in your life. Okay, so I want you to consider that, and then to reclaim our power, how can we choose to do things differently? What are some different ways that you would show up if that voice wasn't there? Something to examine, to think about. I hope it's helpful. Feel free to leave any comments or questions. Definitely check out Cedra Stone's book, The Shadow King, and jump into our free Facebook group to get the full in-depth of this. I go into a lot more detail. Much love to you. Have a beautiful day.